It started. Optional, click the button. No, I don't need to do that. Live stream is running. If you see the button stop streaming. I see the button stop streaming.
Yeah, everything working. And the last step is just how to turn it off.
Yeah.
But you can just cross it. May you cross it? Because last time you do this last step and turn it off.
So stop the live stream.
Yeah, you don't need to do it.
I won't do it. No.
Yeah, you need to cross it.
What do you mean?
have?
What do you mean cross it?
I mean.
Oh.
Yeah, cross it.
Okay.
No, maybe you need to cross it right now.
Sorry, what do you mean by cross it?
I mean, take a pen and cross it.
Oh.
Yeah. In case.
Right. So.
Yeah, with text. Yeah, something like this.
Cross it off.
Cross it off.
Not
Thank
cross.
you.
Not cross it. Cross it might be.
Cross out maybe, or crossed off.
No, cross off. Now. So that's.
Probably it's over there. You put it over there.
So that's going.
Yeah.
I have to press only that start button down the bottom, don't I?
Actually, yeah. What you did. You did it, right?
I didn't.
No. Forget about it. I just did it for another thing.
All right. Now, before running a live stream.
Yeah, I will do it again. You don't need to do it. I just turn on off. If it's green, people will hear you, what you're saying.
Hi, I'm having a big day today for an old man. Finalised my proposal to go global with my program to help people everywhere in the world with mental health and addiction problems, and also learn how to live stream on YouTube, Instagram and Facebook at the same time as TikTok. TikTok is much simpler, but fortunately I've got a very, very capable tech guy who helps me, because I was born a long time before there was any technology, and I have difficulty with technology, and that's partly because I think it's my duty to focus on the clinical things. 500,000 consultations over 52 years is a lot of experience, and a lot of it becomes subconscious. You instinctively know things, you instinctively know what to do and what not to do, mostly. Sometimes I make mistakes and do things I shouldn't. Last night, TikTok banned a little part of my live streaming, and I don't know why. I never advocate anything addictive, and I never advocate anything pornographic, and I'm not very financial, but I think it was something about money that they didn't like. Anyway, so where are we today? Not very well prepared, but the 5 major things that you need to have a good life, so important. I didn't know them until I was in my 80s. Didn't learn them in medical school, didn't learn them in school. Learned them when I started to try to help other people. The first thing is mental health. Try to become mentally healthy. That's so important. If you haven't got that, you're going to have a lot of trouble. The second thing is to have good relationships. For hundreds and thousands of years, human beings lived in nature in groups of 30 to 150 people, very close, with no brick walls. And that's what our chemistry and our genes, which are not as important as we used to think they are, but the environment that creates our chemistry, switches some genes on and switches some genes off, was always one of lots of people close together. No brick walls, no separate houses. Everybody was very close. So good relationships. Thirdly, a strong immune system. We have cells and antibodies in every part of our body that fight diseases, that fight infections, allergies, inflammation, autoimmune diseases and cancers. If that's weak, you're going to get sick. If it's strong, you're going to be healthy. And the things about our lifestyle that strengthen or weaken our immune system. The next thing is the habit of smiling. It's very, very important to smile a lot, because we all knew that when you're happy you smile, but what we didn't know is that smiling makes us happy, because smiling causes our brain to produce more of the chemicals that make us happy. We've got about 25 chemicals in us that make us happy. There's over 20 endorphins and dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin and noradrenaline. And when we smile or laugh, those happy chemicals increase. And the fifth thing is no addictions. And of course, if you're mentally healthy and you have good relationships and you smile a lot, you're not going to have addictions. Addictions almost always occur because of mental ill health. When I started to work 10 hours a week in an addiction clinic in 1997, I wanted to know what causes addiction. And nobody in the clinic knew what caused addiction or thought it was important. But it's always important when you've got a problem to know what causes the problem. If you know what causes it, it's easier to fix. If you don't know what causes it and you don't fix it, you're probably going to relapse. It's going to come back. And I went to all the addiction clinics in Perth and Sydney and couldn't find a single addiction worker who knew what caused addiction. But one day, sitting in the addiction clinic I worked in, I saw 15 heroin addicts and 5 of them had ADD. And it was, as I talked to them about it, it was apparent that the distresses of ADD drove them to seek relief, and the relief they found was heroin. A lot of people at that time thought, and still think, that addiction causes mental health causes mental health problems. Well, it definitely doesn't make them better, it makes them worse. But after I discovered that a third of the addicts I was seeing, the heroin addicts I was seeing, had ADD, I inquired carefully and found with each one, as I talked to them about their childhood, their parents, their siblings, their home, their community and their schools, that 19 out of 20 became addicts or turned to addictive substances to get relief from mental health distresses. The common mental health distresses were, first of all, worry, anxiety was the commonest. General worry or anxiety, social anxiety, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorder, multiple phobias, phobias of heights, phobias of cats, phobias of this and that and the other. So the commonest mental health disorder to give rise to seeking relief from street drugs and becoming an addict was the worry anxiety disorders. Then there was major depression, there was sleep disorders, bipolar disorder, ADD, ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, very low self-esteem, schizophrenia, a few, autism, a few. And once I discovered that, I started to treat all my patients with dual diagnosis. Dual diagnosis is diagnosing and treating the mental health issues at the same time as you're treating their addictions. And that's what every addict needs, and none of them were getting it. In the 1970s in Perth, Western Australia, they separated mental health care from addiction care. So there were mental health clinics, and if you had a mental health illness, you would go to one of those clinics. They had very long waiting lists, and they refused to see anyone who was an addict or an alcoholic. So if you had an addiction, you went to the addiction clinic. At the addiction clinic, they were not the least bit interested in mental health. None of their business. We're treating addiction. You can't treat addiction successfully unless you also treat the mental health disorders, which makes it so much easier for people to quit addictions and so much less likely they'll relapse. Because if the cause of an addiction is still there, why aren't they going to relapse? Well, most of them do. And I'm very happy to say that now you can go online and search and you'll find lots of clinics doing dual diagnosis. When an addict managed to get clean, to break their addiction, they could get an appointment at a mental health clinic, but it was usually 3 or 6 months away, and by that time they'd relapse, and then they would refuse to see them. So if you have an addiction, it's very important to realize that you have got a mental health disorder, usually 2 or 3. A lot of people can cope with one mental disorder, but if they've got 2 or 3, they've got ADD and anxiety and depression, they have great difficulty resisting getting relief from street drugs and becoming addicts. One of the 3 main things about ADD is impulsivity. ADD people have poor focusing and concentration. Most of them are overactive, although a few are underactive, but they're nearly all very impulsive. And if someone shows them a drug, they've got to have it. When I was seeing them, sometimes if I wanted to give them some medicine in my clinic, rather than just a prescription, I was wanting to start them, I'd just put the tablet on the desk in front of them and not say a word, and they would just pick it up and put it in their mouth. They couldn't resist. They're impulsive, which makes it very difficult for ADD people to avoid becoming addicts. and the regulations about ADD medicines cause a lot of people to become addicts. They're supposed to protect them. If they don't protect them, they cause them to become addicts, because the regulations, the three main medicines for ADD are all addictive. Ritalin, dexamphetamine, Adderall, all addictive. So they thought, oh, well, that's a bit dangerous. We won't let family doctors, we won't let GPs prescribe them. You'll have to get them from a pediatrician if you're a child, or from a psychiatrist if you're an adult. So what happened is those specialists have often got quite long waiting lists. They're often quite expensive. If you see them in a free government clinic, the waiting list is very long. The upper end of town, the well-to-do people, can often manage, but a lot of the people who are not so well off, and they're often not well off because one or other of their parents had ADD, so didn't have very good education, didn't have very good employment, didn't have much income, so they're comparatively poor. So, and the kids run a bit wild, and they're sitting ducks for crystal meth and ice and cocaine and ecstasy dealers, because in ADD the front part of your brain is only half awake. It's not focusing and concentrating very well. It's not controlling you, so you're hyperactive and impulsive. And the three main medicines for ADD are all stimulants that help to wake your brain up and help you to focus and concentrate and control yourself better. What I found in the end was that a milder stimulant called modafinil was the best solution, because it's not addictive. Any doctor can prescribe it. Your family doctor can prescribe it, who knows you and you know them and they know your family, and they're in a better position in a way to look after you, except the fact that if family doctors are not allowed to prescribe the medicine for a particular thing, particular problem, they tend not to know much about that problem, because people don't come to them about that problem because they know they can't get the medicine, so they have to go to the pediatrician or the psychiatrist. So a lot of family doctors don't know nearly as much about ADD as they would if they were allowed to prescribe the usual medicines. But anyway, I found an unusual medicine was the best, and I found it in a very tragic way. About 15 years ago, a 23-year-old IT worker came to see me, and he was very distressed, and he didn't know why, and I diagnosed his ADD. You got ADD. But I said, I'm just a GP. I'm not allowed to prescribe the medicines for ADD. You have to go to a psychiatrist. He's 23, too old for a pediatrician. And he just couldn't afford to go to a psychiatrist, because at that time he'd lost his job because he'd become because he started to take street drugs, and that on top of his ADD made him too unreliable, so he was fired. So I said to him, I can prescribe modafinil for you. I've never prescribed it before. I only read about it, but I can't give you the so-called proper medicines for ADD, and you can't afford to go to a psychiatrist. And even if you could afford to go to a psychiatrist, he would not be allowed, or the psychiatrist would not be allowed to prescribe the ADD medicines, because the regulations say you can't prescribe those addictive medicines for addicts, and they classify you as an addict. So I said to him, would you like to try this medicine which I've never prescribed before? And he didn't have much choice, so that's what we did. I gave him a prescription for 30 modafinil tablets. And he was 125 kilos, so he had to take 3 every morning. So he got 30 tablets, took 3 every morning, did wonders for him. He was the best he could ever remember being. But 30 tablets in Australia 15 years ago cost him $143. And he'd managed to beg, borrow and steal $143, but he couldn't do it again. He just couldn't get the money to continue because he weighed so much. He had to take 3 tablets a day, so 30 tablets lasted him 10 days, cost him $14.30 a day. And he got so upset about that, angry and generally frustrated and upset, that he hung himself. Tried to hang himself on his bedroom door hook, but the hook broke because he was 125 kilos. So a few days later his flatmate told me he went down to the river and hung himself from a tree. So a bit of a wake-up call for me. And then I found I could have bought those modafinil tablets, double strength, for 50 cents each from India. So that man who hung himself because he couldn't afford medicine could have easily afforded 75 cents a day, even on unemployment benefits. In Australia, any legal medicine that's legal in Australia can be imported from overseas for your personal use, a maximum of 3 months at a time. So from then on, I got modafinil tablets for patients with ADD, and they work very well. They're about a half or a quarter as strong as the usual Ritalin, dexamphetamine and Adderall. But they have the great advantage that they work for 8 to 12 hours. So you can take them in the morning and you'll be good all day. Whereas the other ones usually only work for 3 or 4 hours. So you usually have to take them in the morning, again at lunchtime, and then in the afternoon, which is a problem for children. You can get sustained release forms of those medicines, but a lot of people find they don't work. I don't know why, but that's the fact of it. One of the problems that I gradually found was that the reason why there's so much mental health problems and the treatment's not very effective, and it often ends up with addiction because people can't get or don't have much luck with medicine, so they get a street relief, which is all addictive. The problem was that with everything you need tools. Nearly everything we do, we need tools to do. And the tools for mental health and addiction are not strong. There are only two, and they've both got great weaknesses. The first tool is talk therapy or psychotherapy or counselling, which is very helpful. Probably more helpful from having someone to support you, to not feel that you're all on your own, than actually helpful. There are some very good therapists, but it's difficult. And the problem with it is that to be a therapist, you have to have a 4-year university degree, or a 6-year PhD, or a 12-year psychiatrist training. The psychiatrist does the usual medical training of 6 years, does a couple of years in hospitals of general health care, and then does 3 to 5 years special training in psychiatry. So those people are highly educated. There's not enough of them, never will be enough of them, and they're expensive. Not their fault. It's just that if you have to have a very long training, which is costly, takes a lot of time, a lot of money, you've got to get, to do that, you've got to expect to be well paid when you graduate. And not everyone who does that training is a good therapist. The second problem is that talk therapy is very slow. With a new patient, you need an hour at least to discuss with them their problems, to work out what their disorders are, what caused them, what keeps them going, what makes them worse, and what will make them better. And then you usually, ideally, have half an hour, 3/4 of an hour consultations every week for quite a long time. And people say, quite often, in Australia, Medicare subsidises 10 consultations per annum, and people are saying that's not enough. Well, it's very often true, it isn't enough, but that's a problem. There's never going to be enough therapists, and they're going to be expensive. And they're expensive if you pay them, or you've got private insurance. And if you have to go to a free government clinic, there's going to be a long waiting list. And you'll probably, they'll probably stop counselling you before they really want to or should, because there's so many people queuing up behind you to get therapy. The second tool with mental health and addiction is medicine, and medicine's got a terrible problem. They can be addictive. The people who need to take medicines want the medicine to work quickly and well, so they get better and they don't need to take the medicine. But the businesses that make medicines want you to take as much medicine as possible for as long as possible, if possible, for the rest of your life. So they make a lot of medicines addictive. As we said, the commonest mental health problems, worry, anxiety, and all the medicines for worry, anxiety are addictive. And sleep disorders is another common problem, and the treatments for sleep disorders are all addictive. I'm old enough to remember when the treatment for those things were barbiturates, and barbiturates, there were many different kinds, and they were all addictive. Short acting, long acting, medium term acting, strong, weak, mild, all addictive. And then in the 1960s we started to get these great new medicines, Valium, Serapax, Mogadon, and they were all addictive. There's also Ambien and Stilnox, and they're addictive, very addictive. Very effective when you first take them, but you only have to take them for a couple of weeks and you're addicted. Very hard to stop them. If you do stop them, you're worse off than you were before you started them. I had one very tragic case that caused me a lot of trouble. A man was referred to me who was taking 17 Stilnox a day, and he used to regularly manipulate his family by saying, "Oh, I'll kill myself if you don't do what I want." And when I diagnosed him, he had the usual, I can't remember, I think it was 3 different problems. Depression as well as anxiety. So anyway, I diagnosed all these things and gave him 3 different medicines to cover all of them, and he was much better. He was much better, and he was good for 3.5 years. And then one weekend, or 1 week, he disappeared, and his family went looking for him, and at that time he lived on his own in a flat, and his son found him on the floor of the kitchen, unconscious, obviously taken an overdose. So the ambulance took him to hospital. In hospital he was found to have compartmental disease. That is, some of the muscles in his legs were dead because he'd just been lying for so long that they didn't get oxygen, and so he had a bad limp from there on. And the hospital doctors reported me to the medical board for prescribing too much medicine. And that's a problem. And what I found eventually was that there are quite a lot of people that psychiatrists and smarter doctors won't treat, because they're going to do funny things like that, take too much medicine sooner or later, and when they do, the casualty department doctors report the doctor who prescribed the medicine to the medical board, and the medical board fines you. I had another case like that. I had 2 women, one in the mid-20s and one in the mid-30s, who were heroin addicts. And they were referred to me, and I saw them, and the older one had very significant mental illnesses. The younger one had significant mental illnesses. And they had had a brother, but a year before he OD'd on heroin, so he was gone. So I diagnosed these two ladies and gave them the treatment that they needed, and they got a lot better. But their mother rang me up and said, "You're giving them too much medicine." And I said to her, "Well, I don't think I'm going to take your advice. You had 3 children. They all became heroin addicts, and one of them killed himself or died. I think I know better than you do what these girls of yours need." So she reported me to the medical board, and they fined me $10,000. So I had to, for self-preservation, start to do what I then realised quite a lot of psychiatrists and doctors did, which was they just wouldn't treat some people. So they all ended up alcoholics or street drug addicts. Difficult. So what do we need to solve the mental health and the addiction problems? Since the COVID epidemic, you can't pick up a paper or a magazine or watch the television without hearing about mental health. And you know that a lot of those people are going to end up addicts. So what's the solution? Well, I came to the conclusion that the solution was we had to have better tools. Perhaps that's not quite true. I started to develop better tools without realising that that's what I was doing. But in the end, I realised that we needed to have a package of tools that were highly effective, were non-addictive, weren't dangerous, and that will solve people's problems. So the first tool was a checklist, 20-question checklist that asked people 20 routine questions, and my nurse could do that. And then she'd give me her checklist report, and I'd look at it and ask the patient to come, and in 5 minutes I'd know as much as it would have taken me 25 minutes if I'd started from scratch. But I didn't have all that time, so that was helpful. And the second tool was videos. There's no faster, easier, better way to learn about mental health than with videos. And when I first started to do that, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, I remember the first video cost me $2,200, and it was somewhere around 10 or 12 minutes, and it got 10,000 viewings in 9 months, and it was very helpful and very good. So I did some more. I made another 8, but I had to do it more cheaply. The next time I managed to find a girl who would do 2 videos for $1,100, and eventually I found some people who had come to my home with all the equipment, do 5 videos for about $500. Not very professional, not very slick, but got the content, got the information. That's what people needed. There seemed to be a feeling that the slickest videos weren't very helpful. But, and of course then I had to have a website. So I had a website called, still have, called mentalhealthvideos.com. But gradually people wouldn't watch those longer videos. So I spent a lot of time, I thought, oh, they can't be very good, I'll make them again. I made 31 videos, spent a lot of time and quite a lot of money making 31 7 to 12 minute videos, and they didn't watch them either. And then I found that what I had to do was make 1 minute or under a minute TikTok type videos. I made 50 because you had to have a lot, because you can only really deal with one matter or one subject in under a minute. So each problem had to have its own under a minute video. So I ended up with over 100. And I think that I will end up with 200. And I'm just in the process of revising. I'm about halfway through redoing them all, because I learned from people and from experiences how to make them better. And then I learned something else very important, which was live streaming. 5 months ago, I think I'd never heard of live streaming, didn't know what it was, but my tech guy told me about it, and I watched it, and I knew that that was very valuable. So now I do an hour and a quarter live streaming on 4 different channels at once, on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday at 7 p.m. Perth time, which is 9 p.m. Sydney and Melbourne time, 7 a.m. New York time, and 4 a.m. Los Angeles time. And we get sometimes 8 or 9% viewers from UK and 15% from the US. But yeah, so tools, 1 minute videos, the website mentalhealthvideos@az.com, but like everything I do, it was too long, so now we've got another website called smilefixit.com, and we're starting to put stuff on that which is shorter and will suit most people. Some people will want to watch the longer things on the other site, and live streaming. And we made an app, because an app on people's phones that they could do themselves on their own, anytime, anywhere, as many times as they wanted, was better than a checklist that someone else did. Apps are a lot of work, especially if you're inexperienced, as I was, and they're very costly, cost a lot of money, and I couldn't afford to do it until I found a university student who was doing his master's in information technology and already had a 5-year technology degree, and he helped me make it, so it cost me $25,000 instead of $100,000 or $200,000, and it was much better because I could talk to him every day face to face. If I'd done it with the other people, I have to drive to their offices and find parking, and I just couldn't do that all the time. But now I know that my app is too long. It asks you questions about every important aspect of your mental health and of addictions, a bit about social health, a bit about physical health, and you can answer those questions in 10 minutes. And I thought that's reasonable. That's reasonable. Each question, or most of the questions, got 3 possible answers. No, it's not a problem. Yes, it's a moderate problem. Yes, it's a severe problem. And all you have to do is read the question and tap no, moderate or severe. There, bang, 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 bang. You can do the questions in 10 minutes. But I knew that would be too long for some people, so we made it so that after you'd answered 8 questions, you could just tap report, and you get a report on the 8 questions you answered. Or if you got to 15 questions, you tap report and get a report on those 15 questions. So I thought that would overcome the problem of people who want to go very fast. And it helped, but it's too long. So I'm going to make it 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes. And the advantage of an app over talk therapy is that talk therapy is so long and slow that you usually only deal with the 1 or 2 worst problems. And you hear people say, oh, I've got depression, or they say, oh, I've got ADD, or I've got bipolar. And they've all got 3 or 4 or 5 things, perhaps, or 4, 6, 8 or 10 things. And perhaps some of the things are not very big. They're not major depression, they're not panic attacks, they're not enough friends, or not a good enough job, or not enough holidays, or something less important, which I thought was important. But the newer version will reduce the number of questions by at least 40%, maybe 50%. Tools. The next tool was powder medicine, because in mental health and addiction you often need the medicine to work quickly. You suddenly start to get social phobia, or you suddenly start to get panic attacks, or you suddenly want to have a cigarette, or you suddenly want to have a shot of heroin, or you suddenly want to buy a bottle of whiskey and drink it all. And you need to have medicine that work fast. There are 2 very good reasons for that. One is it reduces your suffering. And the other tool, apart from powder medicine, was pocket dispensers. So you have your powder medicine in your pocket like that. So when you swallow a tablet or a capsule, it takes half an hour to an hour to go right down your gut, get into through your liver and into your blood system and back up to your brain where it's usually needed, or wherever it's needed. Half an hour to an hour. And between 1 and 2 hours to work quickly. But powder on your tongue, sucked, not swallowed, gets into your bloodstream of your tongue in 5 minutes. Your tongue is pink or red because the blood vessels are so close under the surface. And you drop thousands of tiny granules of powder on your tongue and suck it, don't swallow it, and it gets into the circulation very quickly, in 5 minutes. So that's fast enough that if you start to feel a panic attack, or you start to feel anxious, or you start to crave a cigarette, or want some other drug, you just whiz the dispenser out of your pocket, pop the powder on your tongue, suck it, don't swallow it, and in 5 minutes you're starting to get relief. In 10 to 15 minutes you're having strong relief. So if you do that as soon as it starts, things don't get bad. They start mild, you hit them on the head and slow them right down, and you don't suffer nearly as much, which is important. But there's another very good reason why speed is so important, and that is it permanently cuts. I'm not allowed to say the word cure. No, you can't cure things. Mental health. Well, you can make a pretty big dent in them if you get them quick enough. Because mental health illnesses and addictions are all, in a way, habits. What's a habit? Habit is something that you've done so many times that the electrical messages and the chemical messages in your bloodstream that trigger these things get strong and fast and hard to stop, and then you've got a habit. But if every time they start you can stop them very quickly, that weakens the thing. The electrical trigger or the chemical trigger, the hormone or whatever, it gets weaker. Every time you stop it, as soon as it starts, it gets weaker. So if you can stop those problems every time they start, not just sometimes, it has to be every time, you break them. They get weaker and weaker and weaker. But it really needs to be powder, and it really needs to be in your pocket, and you really need to be able to take it anytime, anywhere. Driving the car, in the middle of work, at church or the movies, you whiz it out and pop it on your tongue, and keep it weak, and that will gradually reduce the habit. So you stop habits doing the opposite of how you started habits. You started habits the first time you did something, it was you were slow. It took quite a while. You had to think about it and you had to try. And when you've done it 100 times, you don't, half the time you don't even realize you're doing it. You're just doing it. And the triggers are strong, they're automatic, almost unconscious, and hard to stop. But then if you stop them, if you started there and you're up to there, and there it's strong, and you just stop it and delay it a little bit, you gradually weaken it. And there's better than that. If the powder has got a strong, nice taste, and every time you take the powder, you have this nice taste, and a few minutes later you start to feel better, then your body turns that into taste conditioning. Your body connects those two things, and then you start to find that as soon as you taste it, you start to get the benefit. It's a sort of placebo effect, and so you're cutting the thing you want to stop, the mental distress or the addiction, even earlier. And it gets even better than that. Because with powder, it's so easy to mix powders together. And somebody who's in trouble needs, usually first of all, this is their biggest concern, is to stop craving. The craving driving them mad. The craving for alcohol, the craving for heroin, the craving for nicotine or whatever. The second thing is they need to stop the mental distress, the anxiety or the depression or whatever. And the third thing is they need to stop the cause of the mental distress that caused the addiction. So in a lot of cases we can mix 2 or 3 powders that help to stop a lot of it, many things at once. And that's so much more powerful than one thing at a time. 3 things that start to work in seconds and are strong in 5 to 10 minutes is so much better than one thing that takes half an hour to an hour to work and only deals with one problem. So today is a big day for me because today in my extended family there's some very smart people. There's about 6 of them that have made global impacts. And the smartest of them is a nephew who never made it to university, but he taught himself to program, got up at 5 o'clock every morning and taught himself to program, and then taught other people programming, and ended up becoming a legal software billionaire. Yeah, he became a legal software billionaire and won the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. And I'm hoping he's going to work with me to turn this little program of mine into a global program. Because really, a lot of the greatest suffering and the greatest costs is due to mental health and addictions. There's not a very nice problem coming up here in Australia. Since the COVID, where mental health got a lot worse. You know, people need the 3 Ps. They need people, purpose and pleasure. And during COVID, they were stuck at home. They didn't see their friends, and they missed out on the people, and they missed out on a lot of pleasures. Couldn't go out and have a nice meal or go to the movies or have a few drinks with a few friends at the pub. So mental health got a lot worse. You seem not to be able to pick up a newspaper or watch a television program without without hearing about mental health or addiction. And we're having an absolute epidemic of domestic violence. And every 4 days on average, a woman is killed in Australia by her partner or ex-partner. And that never used to happen. It's getting worse. And what the problem is that we're facing is that now 38% of family doctor consultations are mental health consultations. 38%. It used to be much less than that. 38%. And only 14% of medical students want to become GPs, want to become family doctors. It's going to be... And when I was practicing years ago, I always made 15-minute appointments. But then a lot of doctors were making GPs were making 10-minute appointments. And more recently, it seems to be down to 6-minute appointments. And if we have a great shortage of family doctors, and we have a lot of people needing mental health health care and addiction care, what's going to happen is a lot of those 6-minute consultations are going to have to become 3 or 4-minute consultations. Just bang, sit down, write a prescription, out the door. not satisfactory, professionally unsatisfying for the doctor and not satisfactory for the patient. But it's either that or, my sister has got a favourite doctor who takes a week to get an appointment. So it won't be too bad in the well-to-do areas, but there's going to be some poor areas where it's going to be terrible. And those people are going to crowd out the casualty departments at big hospitals, which is very costly and inconvenient way of doing things. And the government is talking about and opening up lots of new government GP clinics to solve this problem. All that's doing is taking GPs out of private practices where they work pretty hard into government clinic practices. I don't think that's going to solve the problem. And so one problem is family medical care will get worse and worse and worse. And the other is more and more people are going to go down the street and get a solution in the form of a street drug and become an addict. Not a good prospect. So I'm going to try and make my program global. And as it's been a big day, I think better be enough. What's today? Today is Friday. I'll be here again tomorrow at 7 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday. Thank you.